entrance of all of our videos.
Y'all ready?
Ooh.
Me twerking and doing something with my bodily.
She twerked. Cowbell keeps falling.
Come back to us. One last, in order to really understand how much this piece of work means to us, it would be nice for y'all to get to know us through some questions.
Yes.
So here we go. First question for Justine. How do you define your identity as a nuyorican, and how has it evolved over time?
Oh my god, that is deep. I can talk more about how it has evolved over time. So when I was younger, basically non-existent to like anyone that looked at me. I was this little emo girl throughout high school. The music was different. I didn't know Spanish, but I definitely like understood my grandmother talking to me.
Which is a big theme in this.
Oh god.
Her Tamagotchi, girl, go to sleep. These things are talking.
Everything was more at home when it came to the culture. It was more like all the Puerto Rican things were kind of done at home, where it would be the music we listened to, the holiday events, the food. And then as time went on, I changed. I kind of was like a little lost and just trying to figure out who I really was.
Like your identity tied to your heritage?
Yeah, I kind of felt like that. Super upsetting telling someone, because they'd ask like, where are you from? And I'd be like, oh, I'm Puerto Rican. And they'd be like, oh, do you know Spanish? No, I don't. The response was always like, oh, so you're one of those Puerto Ricans. And it's like, well, okay. Honestly, it's not until the past 5 years, maybe, I really understood that this is who I am, even though I've always tried to hide it or not really like wanted to identify with it.
Ooh, this is who I am.
Accepting that made me also understand it's also okay that this is the version of Puerto Rican that I am too. Like I don't really have to like
Sorry, you got me excited.
I can be who I am and still be and understand my culture. You are okay with being the Puerto Rican that doesn't speak Spanish or might not understand much or is still even learning about their culture and the island as time goes by. Just doesn't make me any less than anyone else.
Rock on. Oh, that's beautiful.
No, yeah.
I'm happy for you that it has opened up a new way of living. You're willing to tell and express that through an artistic way that you're comfortable with.
Mm-hmm. Being able to do a personal project was always something on my mind, and this, for it being the first one, feels like really great.
First one is good.
Okay. Why did you put something like this together? What inspired you to start a project like this?
So I was living in New York. I just felt like it was easy for me to move here, exist here as someone within the diaspora who had my own challenges of being a melting pot of New York immigrants and migrants. I just felt like I had the tools and the knowledge and the call to put something like this together that represents Nuyoricans, that represents New Jerseyans, that are Puerto Rican or mixed Puerto Ricans. I feel like that's something that I really like to represent. Actually gets me tight because my mom is Italian and Puerto Rican, and she went through similar things like you, and also me too. People who have families who move here, and you know, this is the culture that it be, but it's still very tied to Puerto Rico, and people don't give that much credit.
They don't.
We're going to discuss in the calendar. Just inspired by different elements of growing up in this area, witnessing like the changes in my family when it comes to language, when it comes to culture. I grew up around Spanish-speaking people my whole life. My dad's fully bilingual. Both of my grandmothers speak Spanish fluently. My Cuban abuelo only spoke Spanish. I only talked to that man in Spanish. Spanglish, actually. We never had one English conversation in our lives. He would try so hard, which was so cute, but like he was so bad at it, and I was barely getting Spanish right. We was using sign language. Who knows what we were using? But I was spoken to in Spanish, and like I just learned to understand it to a certain extent, and but responded in English, which was a very common Nuyorican / East Coast way of Puerto Ricans speaking Spanish.
Understanding.
Yeah,
but
and
not really able to-
understanding Spanish. I think it's interesting what our brains do in that way. Having all these intersectionalities really inspired me. Second question: how do you see your upbringing blending elements of both Puerto Rican and New York cultures?
I just feel like the pride. There's a equal amount of pride between being from New York and also just the pride that every Puerto Rican feels about being Puerto Rican.
So when that intersectionality occurs, it's super pride.
Yeah, basically. Maybe you can even tap into this, just like the style and aesthetic too. I feel like just of being New York and also Hispanic and like Puerto Rican, like they have like their distinct styles. The only thing I can think of right now is Fat Joe. He's Puerto Rican, he's New York. The fitted hat, the Timberlands, the pants, the jeans, and like a jersey. Like that was his style.
Puerto Rican, Nuyorican people are tapped into style. Tapped in. One of my great Thea, one of her places that she lived in New York was in the garment district in Manhattan. A lot of my family made clothes. I recently discovered that my grandmother came from Ponce to the Bronx, that they literally had a whole like New York photo shoot of the men in my family, like of my tios. So New York, getting fitted, people from Ponce, Puerto Rico just pulled up and they're getting a photo shoot, probably like Times Square.
Next question: what was your favorite part of the process?
I guess how seamless everything was. A lot of my projects, they're from dreams or visions that I had from like years ago. Stuff that is coming out now.
Someone's speaking to you.
Everything worked out perfectly that day. So it says Emily.
Oh wow.
Right where we parked to start our first part of the photo shoot was me being a baddie on the car. Okay, so I'm meant to do this right now. Everywhere we drove, we found flags because it was around the week of the Puerto Rican Day Parade happening this year in 2024. There was faces of confusion for some of my looks that I pulled. I really tapped into my sensuality and my sexuality. The first time I felt in a while. People being like struck to see what I look like, confused, or like don't even want to like look at me. Puerto Rican people walking by while this shoot was happening in Williamsburg and Bushwick, which are historical Nuyorican neighborhoods, walked by and was like, WEPA! I really was happy to channel that. Mixed reactions from the audience really was showing me that this work is not to be taken lightly. I'm representing
the
culture. We're showing up in these neighborhoods that are now historically changed over the past couple of years, and expressing in that power is a lot of responsibility. And I felt a lot of anxiety, and I was actually in the car having to control my breathing. May was calming me down through breath work, and we both had to have moments of meditation as artists who want liberation for where we're from, knowing that I was taking on something that is bigger than me.
My dad grew up in Brooklyn, Bushwick, that area. You know, every time he drives by here or around, all he can do is like mention how all the changes that there are, what buildings used to be before.
What do you hope for future generations of Nuyorican regarding cultural identity and language?
Just hope that they're just able to accept themselves as they are. If they decide to continue to learn about who they are, that's fantastic. But also, if they decide just to live life, that's okay too, because also another part of what it is to be Puerto Rican, living here for like many generations, you're still able to
tap in
and just keep the culture too. If this person doesn't want to continue learning more about the Puerto Rican culture, they have their culture that's been passed down to them that they already know, and that's also just as enough too. I hope they don't lose that part either, like just to keep that tradition.
Tap in whenever you want. But it takes, oh my god, thank you. Energy finds you, and it found you too. With it. We're like Bluetooth, I don't know. I feel really honored to talk about this experience in English for people that feel that way.
Wink. We're here for you.
I feel like this needs to be talked about now. I think that shows within salsa too. I am actively part of the community that is pushing salsa forward as young people.
That's beautiful. I don't really dance. Would I love to know how to dance also? I just take classes. Still not comfortable. But all I see when I go to parties is my parents dancing. Like all the older people, they're dancing to salsa and they're like amazing. People in their like mid-30s even, they're not even like dancing to salsa like that.
As you'll learn in the calendar, salsa was a genre completed here, blossomed out of Cuba first, and then Puerto Ricans understood the Cuban way. Puerto Ricans heavily elevated and created the genre, which is now salsa. A lot of the women in my family are dancers. I just have that connection to musicians. A mix of so many different cultures and backgrounds. Black jazz musicians in New York helped also create the genre. Latin jazz is different than salsa, but a lot of elements were taken to create salsa. I see a future generation as well of salseros. I see a future generation of people representing their Puerto Rican identity as mixed Puerto Ricans. There's a lot of mixed Puerto Ricans in this area. A lot.
Yes.
I come from 2 of them.
I just feel like not even just for Puerto Ricans, even for just Latinos in general that come here, they're expected to know everything that happens or understand everything that has happened in their country. And then when you don't understand, everyone looks at you like, why don't you? You're Puerto Rican.
Girl. Yeah. People talk about skin color a lot.
True.
My dad is very much brown. And when my mom brought him to the family party, like, it was like they're Italians, but like they were like this chocolate guy, but like people would be like, oh yeah, he's definitely Puerto Rican and Cuban, versus like my mom, like, look at her sideways, like she's also Puerto Rican, just in a different way. And there was no way my parents weren't gonna have some Puerto Rican ass children. Look at them.